So hi, I'm John Malpeat from the Los Angeles Poverty Department, which is a worldwide conglomerate that also has among its assets the Skid Row History Museum and Archive. And I'm going to just I want to welcome everybody, and then I will turn it over to Ananya, who is one of the members of the many collectives that have masterminded this wonderful exhibition and everything, all the different elements of history that led up to it, which you'll be hearing about as we do the walkthrough. So, so LAPD, or as we say, the good LAPD, the Los Angeles Poverty Department, was the first arts organization in Skid Row, and our original purpose was, and I think still is, to create community on Skid Row and get the real deal out to Normalville, or as our university-trained archivists would say, shift cognitive authority. But, you can only say that to certain people. So I suggest the real deal out to Normalville. And here, the main fact is, if sun hadn't fallen and you could see all those high-rises across the street, the only reason that Skid Row exists at this point is because of non-stop activism since the 70s. Because as you can imagine, this is a coveted hole in the downtown donut, although the donut's looking pretty raggedy at this point, I must say. The story of this exhibition, the story of violence against people and people who are working hard to create community, is a story that's repeated and repeated and repeated prior to this moment, And in 1984, 2 blocks away, like on the other side of the former LA Times building, which now is based in El Segundo, I believe. Anyway, there's a vacant property. That was a state park, and in 1984, that was turned into Tent City by a group called the Homeless Organizing Team that was residents in Skid Row and a lot of people from the Catholic Worker. And they took that over for about a month and had some housing demands and also some demands for welfare reform. And eventually, after it was the Christmas season, so after the Christmas spirit dissipated, they had to go. Some of the people didn't go, they got arrested, and when they got out of the jail, they formed an encampment on 6th and Gladys behind the Catholic Worker Hippie Kitchen and called themselves Justice Zone. So for the next couple of years, there were about there were a bunch of encampments, 3 politically motivated ones, the Union of the Homeless, Justiceville, one called Love Camp. Eventually, they were all swept down into the LA River Basin, essentially, down where there's this huge white building now, but it was just a nothing zone. And they were kept there for 3 months under the watchful eye of the Salvation Army. And then, during that time, because the activist groups were meeting with the city about taking over a printing building and turning it into a shelter that they would run themselves. And so this turned out to be, bad faith negotiation. And very abruptly, everyone was booted out, and they were given like three-day vouchers to hotels all over the county in order to make it impossible to figure out what happened to these people. So it was to disappear the people and their voices. These tactics that everybody, the Echo Park Collective and this exhibition address explicitly and have lived through, right? So, but by doing the work that you guys have all done, this is defeating that plan of disappearing the people, silencing the voices, because you have a record of what did happen and what should have happened and didn't happen, So, what is the truth? The truth is, listen to the people and act on their wisdom. A few times this has been done in Skid Row, and it's resulted in really powerful results. One was the refresh spot. For about 20 years, there was a battle where people were saying there was no place to use the bathroom, porta potties would be put up, and then it'd take 10 years for that to happen, and then 5 minutes later someone would say, oh, they're being used for illicit activities, and then they'd be taken away. Finally, Alicia Ordonia was working with the city and started listening to the people. She convened residents of Skid Row who said they wanted a place that respected people, that hired local people, that had a welcoming vibe. And now the Refresh Spot, thousands of people use it every month. So by listening to the community, you create successful results. There's also right now, there's a Skid Row action plan that is being developed has been being developed over the last couple of years by a lot of Skid Row residents, working with Housing for Health and the Department of Health Services. And they're about to open the Skid Row Care Campus, where you can just walk in and you can get medical care, you can get a bed, you can get a long-term place to stay, you can get hooked up with anything you want. And so these are examples of how things could work, should work, and need to work if anything's going to work. Otherwise, it's just more violence against the people. So I'm inspired by the activism, the sustained activism of this group. I think everybody is, obviously. And the exhibition will be here, and it's going to be permanently here in our archive, so you can come by anytime you want. And, so it's a place, it was going to find its place, its big place within this large continuity of ongoing activism. So, I'm on your own.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to give you all a minute to get comfortable, yes? For those of you just coming in, if you want to come this way and grab a seat. So it's my great pleasure to join John, Henriette, Zach, Henry, and other comrades at the LA Poverty Department to welcome you to the exhibition Tents and Tenants after Echo Park Lake. I do so in my role as director of the UCLA Luskin Institute on Inequality and Democracy, a research center committed to accompanying movements and communities on the front lines of dispossession and displacement. The militarized eviction of the Echo Park Lake encampment and enclosure of the park in March 2021 was a pivotal moment in Los Angeles, signifying an escalation of state violence against the city's poor and unhoused. At the Institute, we took up the homework assigned to us by residents and organizers banished from the park and initiated research that would ultimately expose how the city's power holders used the ruse of shelter and housing to legitimize displacement. Our report, a short 80,000 words, titled Displacement, The Fight for Housing and Community After Echo Park Lake, published a year after the eviction and enclosure, showed that more people had died than had been housed. The report appeared amidst an expanding regime of banishment in Los Angeles, including programs of carceral containment such as Project Roomkey, the precursor to Inside Safe. This exhibition is about state violence, but it is about much, much more. It is about the struggles and dreams of unhoused tenants for whom the public spaces of the city, parks, sidewalks, freeway underpasses, are home and community. Foregrounding different eras of organizing at Echo Park Lake and the strategies and tactics of spatial justice, the exhibition reminds us that resistance and rebellion must be understood not just as spectacular moments, but as the long arc of insurgency. The exhibition comes at a time when another disaster is upon Los Angeles, turning wealthy neighborhoods like the Palisades and the Malibu coastline into fire zones, ravaging working-class communities who mowed the lawns and cleaned the houses, dispossessing Black and brown families who had put down roots in Altadena, and choking the lungs of all those forced to live and work in the open air of an ash-filled city. As disaster capitalism surges all around us, and the recovery juggernaut led by LA oligarchs like Steve Soboroff and Casey Wasserman gains Olympic speed, we hope that this exhibition will inspire us all to think critically and collectively about the unending crisis that is racial capitalism. What does it mean to understand the City of Angels from the vantage point of its most precarious residents, those constantly fighting and facing disappearance? After Echo Park Lake is not an ending. It is an afterlife, a life after death, community after dispossession, history after banishment, memory after unbearable loss. The afterlife of insurgency is crucial at a time of resurgent white nationalism, because liberal statecraft and our liberal politicians will not protect us from Trump's deportation regime and Musk's techno-capitalism and Robert Kennedy Jr.'s eugenics. They will aid and abet and appease. As the abolitionist premise and promise reminds us, we keep each other safe. After Echo Park Lake refers to the research collective convened at the UCLA Luskin Institute on Inequality and Democracy in the wake of the Echo Park Lake eviction. We, a group of university, encampment, and movement scholars, worked together for over a year, meeting every week in the gardens of UCLA amidst a global pandemic. Two of our most beloved collective members, Gustavo Otzoy, whose words I hold in my hand, and Jessica Queen Mendez, whose words I also hold in my hands, have since passed away. You will hear their voices prominently in this exhibition, and many of you will recognize Queen in this iconic moment of the showdown with the police, the catalog cover, in a searing photo by Joey Scott. Sunny's right on cue. After we lost Gustavo, Annie Powers, historian and organizer, in sorting through his belongings, found a poster Gustavo had made. Many of you know that Gustavo loved making posters. And the poster listed some of the organizations he believed in and fought with and fought for. And on it was LA Can and LATU, but also on it was UCLA. And it shook me and made me smile, because Gustavo had more faith in UCLA than I do. He reminded me constantly of the role of a public university in exposing injustice and demanding justice. So was the case with Queen. She was a participant in the Urban Planning Community Collaborative course that I co-taught in 2024 with movement scholar and organizer Carla Orendorff. Queen was that student who never did her homework, but knew exactly what to say to bypass the readings and make the point. She loved coming to UCLA so much that she came to class and then went to the hospital to give birth to baby Adrian, who is here, whose birthday is coming up. And she returned the next week to class with baby Adrian in her arms. She, like Gustavo, taught us to consider all the ways in which the public university can be the people's university. This exhibition is one of those ways, and I really hope that we've made Gustavo and Queen proud. The exhibition has been conceptualized, created, and curated by the After Echo Park Lake Archive Collective, an incredible group of scholars and artists who have worked closely with Henry Apodaca here at the Skid Row History Museum and Archive. In particular, I want to celebrate and recognize artist and scholar Christy Lovich. Christy, where are you? Who is the brilliant curator of this exhibition. In the exhibition catalog, Christy writes, Cutting against the violence of forgetting, we assert that the form of remembering must take on the shape of connection, a radical joining together, and a declaration of sacred ground, evoking the movement between worlds only made possible through the ofrenda or altar, and in this case, the archive. So let's give it all up one more time for Christy. Christy has been joined by Annie Powers, Will Sense Jr., Jed Harriet, Lloyd Edwards, Amanda Darraway, Leonardo Vilches Zarate, Bria Little, Emma Christie, Adrian Wall Street Segura, and Sonia Verdugo in this archive collective. I also want to take this opportunity to shout out the members of the After Echo Park Lake Research Collective, whose work served as a foundation for the archive and exhibition. Ashley Bennett, Jennifer Blake, Johnny Coleman, Hannah Cornfield, LaDonna Harrell, Terry Klein, Samuel Lutzker, Hilary Malson, Jessica Queen Mendez, Carla Orendorff, Gustavo Otzoy, Annie Powers, Chloe Rosenstock, Rain Laborde Ruiz, William Sense Jr., and Pamela Stevens. The Institute is tiny, and I want to thank our Associate Faculty Directors, Kian Go and Hannah Appel, our absolutely amazing Deputy Director, Marisa Lemarand, and of course, once again, our Community and Research Programs Manager, Christy Lovich. Together, they make the tiny Institute a mighty endeavor. Finally, this exhibition would not have been possible without the generous welcome and galvanizing vision of the LA Poverty Department. Andrea, John, Zach, Henry, thank you. You have been movement teachers for the Institute since our inception in 2016, and I'm so very grateful that our research and public history efforts can be in this vital space that you've created in Skid Row. Thank you to all of you for being here this evening. We hope you will return on February 21st for the panel discussion, Tenants in the Street, on March 14th for the play written by Will, called Echoes Fill Our Spaces, and on March 21st for the performance, The Liberatory Living Room. We're going to do a quick walkthrough of the exhibition. You all will stay in your places, but we're going to point out some key artifacts and images to you all. But before we do that, I want to close my remarks with the words of Annie Powers, who has been pivotal in the research and archive. Annie writes, for members of the After Echo Park Lake Archive Collective, the archive attempts to historicize the future. When we began to organize, there were few examples to which we could look. We now understand that this is not because homeless people did not organize in the past, but because there is no historical consciousness of such movements in the United States. And he continues, despite the mass eviction and the death and suffering it yielded, the archive suggests that we must not see Echo Park Lake as a failure, but part of a long arc of organized homeless people's struggles in LA, the United States, and the world. It is only possible to fail if we forget. Thank you, everyone, and I'm going to turn this over to members of the archive collective.
Hello everyone, I'm Emma Christie. I'm a member of the After Echo Park Lake Archive Collective. Many of the pictures displayed in this exhibition show Echo Park's lush nature. Its lawns and thick mass of waterborne lotus flower offer a respite from smog and pavement. And this is the backdrop of most of the pictures in this archive. What stories do its landscaping, flora, and fauna tell and hide? According to LA lore, Echo Park Lake was named after the echoes of the voices of workers hired in the 1890s by the first superintendent of the Los Angeles Department of Parks, an English immigrant named Joseph Henry Tomlinson, who was a landscape architect. Echo Park Lake's history is entwined with the history of LA's industry, expansion, and labor force. The lake was originally a natural arroyo, which was dammed in 1868 to power a wool mill. This came after the incorporation of LA as a city in 1850, after centuries of conquest and conflict over land and a constant churn of displacement of the native Tongva people. We know that despite being an iconic symbol, the palms we see on the boulevards are not native. The first palms were brought by Spanish missionaries, followed by a palm craze in the 1930s, and the lotus flowers appeared in the 1920s. Echo Park Lake, aside from its water, is a construction, an idea put into practice to fuel a growing and yet cannibalistic city and to carve out a peaceful space for moneyed housed Angelenos who had certain expectations for the city's appearance. In short, Echo Park has always been a place where wealthy city interests have tried to sideline ordinary people, but we refuse to let them.
Hello, my name is Greer Little and I'm a member of the Echo Park Lake Archive Collective. Here you see a wall, and on it calls to defund the police, invest in permanent housing, demand so radical and yet so humane. Perhaps this photo reminds you of the energy of a movement, an uprising, a moment of clarity, when you understood how deeply our systems were failing us and who were the most vulnerable to violence among us. Early in 2020 in downtown LA, chanting protesters carry you from your apartment to the streets. On the steps of City Hall, a sign reads, "Lack of opportunities got us here, Black homeless lives matter." So we march, we dance, we chant, we get organized, get arrested, and a year later, in 2021, after committing to some form of racial awareness, the city repasses Municipal Code 4118, a sit-lie law that banishes the unhoused from city spaces. A disproportionate number among them, roughly 40%, are Black. You think to yourself, a newer Jim Crow, the continued control over the movements of Black bodies, a sense of place defined by constraint. Perhaps this is part of what made the uprising so free, our movement through the streets, the way we took them over, and face to face with the police, we said, "No, you will not be our forever." Just down the street from where these signs are plastered, the seeds of this movement are taking shape. Unhoused organizers are building a community that affirms Black life in the city and experiment in belonging.
Hello everyone, my name is Lloyd Edward. I'm a former unhoused resident of Echo Park Lake and part of the Echo Park Lake archive team. Our Echo Park encampment was under attack. On January 24th, 2020, on a park-like post was a sweep notice from the city mandating that we remove all personal belongings from the northeast corner of the park between the hours of 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. for a routine cleanup. The notice read as follows: personal property cannot be stored in any city of Los Angeles park or beach park in accordance with Los Angeles Municipal Code, LAMC, Section 634426 and 634413, and any personal property stored in violation of these LAMC sections may be removed by the city if it is not removed from the park or beach park within 24 hours. On the date and time referenced above, being January 24th, 2020, any personal property stored in violation of the LAMC will be collected by the city, identified, bagged, and left at the location where the personal property was originally found. All other items, including bulky items and items that pose an immediate threat to the health or safety of the public, will be immediately removed and discarded. We, the unhoused, knew that this was a planned and coordinated tactic by the city to remove our belongings from the park for good. On that day, we protested, along with activists through peaceful demonstrations, demanding that our councilman, Mitchell Farrell, meet with us. This was after we had written a letter titled, "Dear Mitch, Don't Evict Us," to his office, where we offered a pact. We helped keep the park clean in exchange that we, the unhoused, not be harassed, subjected to random sweeps, and allowed to keep our encampment until we found permanent housing. We formed a blockade to stop city trucks from disposing our precious belongings, which they called trash. We shouted, "Fight, fight, fight! Housing is a human right." But our fight did not stop there. On that day, we, the unhoused of Echo Park Lake, held our first press conference with major news outlets, including ABC and the LA Times, where we read statements outlining our concerns and bringing attention to the harassment and intimidation we were facing from the city, the LAPD, and the park rangers. Eventually, the city trucks began to leave and none of our belongings have been thrown out. Although we had won that day, we knew that we had a long way to go. But this day, we had won.
So I want to test if you all are listening carefully. What's the date that Lloyd said? Okay. You want to introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Bennett. I'm a founding member of Ground Game LA.
Pull the mic out.
There we go.
And a deep lover of the community of unhoused neighbors at Echo Park Lake. And this is the picture that got me fired from LASA.
And the date of the image is January 24th, 2020.
Yes. So on that day, this was our second attempt at a blockade at Echo Park Lake. The first attempt that we had at a blockade, sanitation didn't show up. This was the first show of real collective power that we had. Had over 100 people, both housed and unhoused, show up to defend the community at the lake. And it was the first time that we really felt that we could ourselves protect this piece of land that had become so important to our unhoused community members. And I, at the time, was working at LASA, which is the city-county agency that's responsible for handling the homelessness crisis in LA. And I had been working diligently for months with my team to try and get people referred to shelter, referred to housing, and to no avail. We weren't able to get anyone in. I did bring my LASA binder in to show some of the referral forms and the shelters that we would call every day to try to get people housed. But it just is a testament to the fact that the city really was just trying to erase people without giving them any sort of support or housing. And we band together, and this was the first blockade that was successful, that really propelled us into the next era of taking care of each other and taking things into our own hands and really, as a community, providing what each other needs instead of relying on the powers that be to provide that support. That's it.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I didn't have anything prepared.
Oh, there's so many people here. Hey, I'm Annie. I'm an organizer with the downtown local of the LA Tenants Union. We meet here every Wednesday at 7, so if you live in downtown, please come. I'm going to talk about the Power Up table, which is, right there. So the Power Up table began during COVID to address an immediate need. The unhoused community at Echo Park Lake needed cell phone charging, so housed and unhoused people came together to make it happen. You can see in the banner how much the sign was used over time, packing tape layered over and over to fix it to the folding table. But what you can't see is the relationships it built and the discussions it hosted, the impromptu strategy sessions, political education through conversation. What you can't see is the way the table saved the lives of the housed and unhoused people who visited it. Harm reduction, yes. Necessary supplies, yes. But through those things, through time spent together and meetings held, transforming our relationship to each other and the world. What you can't see is the infrastructure of survival and organization developed and hosted at Power Up. What you can't see is the way that a table imagined up and led by homeless people in Echo Park is now a fixture of mutual aid organizing across the city of Los Angeles.
Okay, my name is Will Sins. I was staying in a Project Room Key hotel room 3 miles away from Echo Park Lake when I saw the report on the news that police were beginning to surround the park. It was the night before the raid when the idea to write this zine struck me. I saw everything our community worked to build and maintain being seized and destroyed by law enforcement. I decided on a medium that was accessible to me and the following characters as a way to tell the story. The story features a family of 3, a mom, a dad, and a kid who were forced out of their apartment and had to come and live in the park. At first they were apprehensive as they started to meet their new neighbors who were kind to them, and as they discovered the accomplishments the encampment community had organized to achieve, such as the community garden and the People's Kitchen, they realized that they'd found a place that they could build power in. This was my way of showing the unifying force of community living and organizing. Thank you.
All right.
The night was electric, the mood lively and defiant. You were looking at the people, community members listening to Queen, the strong and inspiring voice within the community. We had learned that a mass of police was gathering at Dodger Stadium to carry out the violent sweep we had been anticipating for nearly 2 months. The cameras and crews from the morning's media attention were long gone. We decided to make our stand on the west side of the lake community, right by Glendale Boulevard and Santa Ynez, near the kitchen, pantry, garden, showers, where the community had built its core infrastructure together. Queen spoke about the Echo Park Lake community and its purpose, about people deserving to be recognized and taking care of each other. She spoke passionately about her life growing up in Echo Park, the proud daughter of an indigenous Yaqui street vendor, about what it means to be family, to be a community, about having Kora, heart. There were around a few hundred eager people gathered, residents of the park and community supporters. The plan of action was discussed. It was around 10 p.m. It was a dystopian scene. The people shared space, determined to fight for the community. There was a rhythmic hammering echoing through the park. Bang, 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 like a clock counting down. Bang, bang. As city workers hurried to install the metal fences meant to close our home and destroy our community. Militarized riot police pushed horses from the south and north side of Glendale Boulevard and from Santa Ynez Street on the west. The people chanted, "Whose streets? Our streets." This is what community looks like. There is no right here, why are you right here? Housing is a human right. Fight, fight, fight. This is an unlawful assembly. You must leave now, blared the megaphones. Lines of armed officers stood across us. The people didn't budge. The air was tense. A single voice cried out at the top of the lungs, "Echo Park, rise up. Echo Park, rise up. Echo Park,
Rise up.
Eventually, the person to the left joined the cry. And then another voice joined. Then another. Louder and louder until the voice of the people roared together. Echo Park, rise up. Echo Park, rise up. Echo Park, rise up.
Echo Park, rise up.
The call to rise up reverberated. It drowned out the hammering, drowned out the police shouts. We were unstoppable. Their guns, weapons, and badges were useless against the voice of the people. The weapons of terror and oppression were met by force, by the passion of the people. The authority to oppress was nullified. We cried out defiantly, willing to give our lives for each other and for our community. In those moments, we were free. In those moments, we had all the power. That was 4 years ago. Since then, a large part of our unhoused community has passed. In shelters, in cedar-ran hotel rooms, on the streets, in hospital beds. The casualties of state violence, of profit over community. However, the spirit and purpose of the community Anna and I live on, and all of us who can see a world burning for change. in those who feel a duty to fight for each other, to stand up for the oppressed, and to fight the oppressor. Oftentimes because we've had no one to fight for us in dire times. In those who cannot turn a blind eye to injustice, to suffering. To USA, be that spark of light, of defiance and resistance. But most of all, be and spread the love that builds and holds community together. Make your voices be heard when it matters most. It is our unity, our courage, our mutual action, and our love that will light the way forward.
¡Que viva!
And we're going to have Will come and talk to us about his painting as the closing moment of this walkthrough. So for those of you who don't know Will, among other things, is a poet, he's an artist, and here is one of his paintings called Street Talk. Baby Adrian, how are you doing? Yeah? So Will, you have a little artist statement which I encourage you all to read. Tell us a little bit, before people read the artist statement, about when you did this painting. Where were you?
Well, I did this painting when I was in the hotel, the Project Room Key hotel room. After when I was staying at the park, we were offered hotel rooms. And when I was in the hotel room, I was looking for some creative way to express myself. We're pretty isolated in those spaces, so having some creative outlet is really important for people in those spaces.
So Will, this looks like an ominous painting, right?
Mm.
What should we see in it that we might not first see when we look at it?
Well, when I created it, it's from a perspective of deep spirituality, my own personal spirituality, and feeling this knowing that people go on after they die. And what's going on in this picture is this is a newly passed away angel who's looking for direction in the afterlife, and he's petitioning a much older spirit for information. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, aside from having a spiritual belief, is just that these kind of natural ways of relating to each other, from the older folks to the younger folks, it's something that's inbuilt in our human nature, and it's something that we need to actively pursue, I feel, is being close community together, and so that we can help each other when we need each other, so we're already there, you know. It's easy to get lost in this world, to isolate and get lost, and you know, like get lost in your career and get lost in your day-to-day and forget about your neighbors and forget about even your own life in your neighborhood. So it's kind of a bit of all of that, of like this energy of like continuing even through death, continuing through these processes of community and working together to create tomorrow and not just letting tomorrow happen to us.
Thank you, Will.
Yes.
And with that, please take a look at the exhibition, get some more food, and then please return for the rest of the public programs over the next couple of months and talk to members of the collective to learn more about the images and archive material that they selected. Thank you all for being here.